Writing a great story is actually simpler than most people think. I know from personal experience that writing a story can be really frustrating, especially when you have a great idea that you're passionate about and you're just struggling to put words on the page. I already have a lot of tips on writing on my channel, but I think this video will help for anyone who's looking for all of that advice condensed and distilled into a singular place. You might have heard of story structures like the hero's journey or Save the Cat. These are great frameworks and I don't want to knock them, but they can be overwhelming, especially when you're just starting out. 12 or 15 steps to memorize? What if we could break down storytelling to its essential elements? And that's what I'm hoping these 5 steps will do. They'll hopefully give you the core principles that make stories work. So let's jump straight in now with the first step, character want. Your story needs a main character who actively wants something specific and concrete. Not vague desires like being happy or finding love. Something tangible that readers can measure and be invested in. And your character should be a proactive participant in the plot. Let's look at the Hunger Games. Katniss doesn't start with wanting to overthrow the government. She wants one specific thing, to save her sister. This want is clear, immediate, and drives every choice she makes. Even as the story expands, this initial want continues to shape who she becomes. In Breaking Bad, Walter doesn't start by wanting to be a drug kingpin. He just wants to make enough money to leave to his family and cover his costly medical bills. Where writers often go wrong is by giving their characters wants that are too vague, like finding themselves, too passive, like wanting to be special, too reactive, like just wanting to escape danger, too abstract, seeking some philosophical truth, or just plain too easy, wanting something that's easily and readily available. Now, to be clear, I do believe a skilled enough writer can pull off almost anything, but for most of us, these are good guidelines to follow, and this will apply to the other steps that I'll talk about in this video. We can think about each Star Wars trilogy as an example of this. I believe the originals work better because Luke Skywalker has clear wants in each film. He wants to leave his farm, then he wants to become a Jedi, and then he wants to save his father. Compare this to Rey in the new trilogy, whose wants are often reactive or unclear. She responds to events rather than pursuing specific goals. She's a passenger in her own plot. So let's talk about how you can test if your character's wants work. First, can you state their want in a single sentence? If not, it's probably too vague. Again, as an example, Luke wants to become a Jedi like his father. Clear, specific, and measurable. Second, does this want drive active choices in the story? A good want forces your character to do things, not just have things happen to them. Again, we can look at Breaking Bad. Walter White's want to provide for his family drives him to make increasingly active choices as the story progresses. Third, can readers track progress towards this want? We need to know when characters get closer or further away from what they want. In Lord of the Rings, for example, we can literally track Frodo's progress towards Mount Doom. Here's a more practical exercise. Write down your character's want. Now ask, could they achieve this want in the first chapter or too early in the story? Does achieving it require active choices? Will readers know when they've achieved it? Does it create natural conflict? And can it evolve throughout the story? Let's move on now to the second step, real stakes. This step isn't about what your character wants, it's about what happens if they fail. Many writers think that bigger stakes means a better story. They make the fate of the world hang in the balance. But here's the truth. Global stakes mean nothing without personal stakes. I actually have an entire separate video just talking about how to write effective stakes in stories. So if you're interested in that, you can watch it after this video. I'll link it in the description. But for now, let's think about what exactly makes stakes feel real. My answer is personal investment. Let's look at Blade Runner 2049, which I think is a highly underrated movie. Kay's investigation, Ryan Gosling's character, could change society, but that's not what makes us care. We care because each discovery threatens his own identity and his own reality. The personal stakes drive the story. Each revelation makes him question who he is, what he believes, and even what's real. Now, stakes can take many different forms in stories. We have physical stakes, emotional, professional, psychological, social, and probably even more that I can't think of. But the point here is that the key is in layering and combining these stakes. So the threats or obstacles in the story are multifaceted and not just single-dimensional. Here's some practical advice for how to create real stakes, which again is a condensed version of my full video on this topic. First, make them personal, which we've already talked about. If your hero is trying to save the world, show us the specific piece of the world they care about, the specific people they might lose. Second, make them immediate. Vague future consequences don't create tension. We need to feel the pressure now. Think about Speed if you've seen it. The bomb on the bus creates immediate stakes. Every second matters. Third, make failure matter. Stakes only work if failing actually has a real consequence. In Game of Thrones, when characters fail, they die, or something even more horrible happens to them. And even when they succeed, the victory often comes with a devastating cost. Fourth, show the cost of success. The best stakes aren't just about what happens if they fail. They're about what success will cost them. Here's how to test if your stakes work. Firstly, can you state the immediate consequences of failure? Second, does success have a cost? Third, are the stakes personal to your character? Fourth, do they get worse as the story progresses? And actually, we'll talk about this a bit more later in the video. And finally, and I think this one's really important, would readers care about these stakes even without the world-ending threats? Let's now look at the third step, which is actually my favorite step: difficult choices. This is where storytelling gets really interesting. It's easy to think about stories as events happening to characters, but I think the best stories are about the choices that characters have to make. There's a quote by American author William Faulkner, which I actually learned about because George R. Martin, the author of Game of Thrones, referenced it. George said, "I've always agreed with William Faulkner. He said that the human heart in conflict with itself is the only thing worth writing about. I've always taken that as my guiding principle, and the rest is just set dressing." Think about the most memorable moments in great stories. They're usually not action scenes, they're decisions. Joel's choice at the end of The Last of Us. Ned Stark choosing honor over pragmatism in Game of Thrones. Walter White choosing to let Jane die. Here's the key. Each choice needs to be difficult. Both options need to cost something. Look at The Dark Knight. Batman's choice between saving Harvey Dent or Rachel. Either way, he loses someone he cares about. That's a real choice. A common mistake is making choices too easy. The hero can either save the innocent people or help the villain. But that's not a choice. There's obviously a right answer. Real choices have no clear right answer. So we can use a practical example here. Instead of, the hero can either save the hostages or catch the villain, try, the hero can either save the hostages or stop the villain from getting a weapon that will kill many more people in the future. Do you see the difference here? Now both choices have serious consequences. Both choices mean that somebody gets hurt. That's what makes it interesting. Your story needs 3 types of choices. First, small choices that reveal character. How they treat people who can't help them. What they do when no one's watching. Second, medium choices that test values. Loyalty versus truth. Personal gain versus helping others. Short-term good versus long-term right. And third, major choices that change everything. Choices from which there is no going back and will result in a fundamental change to the character, and they often come at great personal cost. Each choice in your story should be harder than the last. By the end of your story, your character should face a choice that tests everything they believe in. And remember, you shouldn't jump to the big choices without building through these levels. I know there's a temptation to rush to the big moments you have planned out in your head, but these moments just won't have the same impact if they don't have the right build-up. Let's take a look at the fourth step now, escalation pattern. I'm sure all of us know that things need to get worse as the story progresses, but there's a specific pattern to escalation which I think is often missed. It's not just about making things harder, it's about how each solution creates bigger problems. Let's break down how proper escalation works. The pattern basically is that first a character faces a problem. Second, they solve it using their skills or resources or whatever else. Third, this is important, this solution should create a bigger problem. And then this leads into 4, the new problem requires a bigger sacrifice. And then finally, you rinse and repeat with increasing stakes until the resolution. I hope you're not sick of me referencing Breaking Bad by this point, but seriously, it's one of the best shows ever made for a reason. And let's look at how Breaking Bad follows this pattern. So first, Walt faces a problem that he needs money, and to solve it, he starts cooking meth, which is using his own skill. This creates another problem that he needs to sell the meth, but also sell it quickly. And the solution to this is to partner with dealers. These dealers lead to a whole host of problems, like Tuco's unpredictability and insane violence. And the solution to this is that they end up killing Tuco and the other dealers. And then they have another problem where again they need new distribution. And this leads to him dealing with Gus. Do you see how each solution creates a worse problem? In my mind, there are 2 types of escalation, external and internal. External escalation is about physical danger, more powerful opponents, that sort of thing. But internal escalation is about personal cost, deeper moral compromise, and harder choices. Often these go hand in hand, but not always. Common escalation mistakes I see are random problems with no connection, the stakes don't increase meaningfully enough, or maybe the solutions are too easy, or there's no actual personal cost to the solution. If I was to summarize this step, basically I would say to build your escalation effectively, what you should do is start small but significant to the character, and then each subsequent problem should connect to the previous solution but require a bigger sacrifice each time. Test your character more deeply as you move towards the climax and reveal more about the theme of your story. Let's talk now about the 5th and final step, which, rather fittingly, is about the resolution of your story. Your ending isn't just about wrapping up plot points, it's about delivering emotional satisfaction. Mainly, this is around, first of all, resolving the conflicts set up by the plot. This should be both the external conflict, which is whatever your main story is about, as well as the internal conflict, which is specific to your main character. Game of Thrones, for example, the TV show, the ending failed because while it resolved the external conflict, it ignored the character arcs that we'd invested in. So it failed at resolving the internal conflicts of those characters. Secondly, the resolution needs to feel earned. Everything that came before, the choices, the sacrifice, the struggle, should make this ending feel inevitable. Now, there is something important to talk about here. Satisfaction doesn't always mean giving readers what they expect, or maybe even what they want. So if we take Lord of the Rings, for example, even though Frodo manages to destroy the ring, he finds out at the end he can never actually return to the Shire. Now, this works because it honors the truth of his journey and what Tolkien was trying to say, that saving something often means being changed by the battle. We can also look at Breaking Bad again. Walt's final admission to Skylar, "I did it for me," satisfies us because it's honest, not because it's happy. Obviously, by the end of Breaking Bad, Walter has pretty much lost everything that he worked so hard to achieve. So, to sum it up for this step, common mistakes I see writers make with their endings are, firstly, a victory without cost. Secondly, wrapping up everything a bit too neatly, which can feel artificial and forced. And thirdly, ignoring previous character growth. I honestly believe that if you're able to follow these 5 steps, it will really help your creative writing and will result in a great story. But just remember that these steps aren't just checkboxes to tick off. They're tools to create stories that resonate, engage, and stay with readers long after the last page. The perfect story isn't about flawless execution of rules. It's not something to be produced and assembled on a factory line. It's about creating an emotional journey that feels real and earned and meaningful. And these 5 steps, I'm hoping, will give you the framework to do exactly that. And that's the video for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. Leave a comment to let me know what you think, and if you want to see more videos just like this, please do like and subscribe, and check out the other videos linked on the screen now. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.